Hey, what is going on, guys? Today we've got an incredible interview with Richard Charschan. He is the president and CEO of AcousticSmart. He and his company travel all over the world. They make some incredible home theaters, designing them, really high-end stuff. And he's got a brand new book, Home Theaterology. I had a chance to meet up with Richard at CEDIA 2024. We had an incredible conversation. So I thought it'd be great to get him on here. Let's talk some home theater and let's talk about some exciting projects that he's worked on in the many, many years that he's been designing home theaters. So Richard, thanks so much for joining us, man. Pleasure meeting you at CEDIA. Great to have you here on the show.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So you have been in the industry for a really, really long time. Tell us a little bit about who you are, maybe your background. How did you get into home theater?
Geez, you're making me sound really old. I mean, I guess I am getting old, but, whatever. Yeah, so I've been doing this for close to 28, 29 years, almost 30 years. And my company started doing home theater when there really was no home theater. There were guys, the people who were doing home theaters were few and far between. And back then it was a 3-gun projector.
Right.
And something called the Ferrugia line doubler. And if you know what that is, then you're probably as old as I am. But back then they were pretty expensive. So I just did it on the side because I have a construction background, and my background is also working in recording studios. And I had a band and I had a publishing deal when I was a kid, writing music, and I still play with the C Pro All-Star Band, but it's strictly for fun these days. So my idea was to, I knew somebody in the AV world who was doing, theaters, but once in a blue moon, because they weren't really popular back then. And I noticed that they didn't sound very good. And I used to always say to them, haven't you ever heard of acoustic treatment? Because from being in a recording studio, like if we can really tame this room down,
Right.
We can make such a difference. And I can't tell you how many AV people I spoke to didn't know what I was talking about. It was kind of nuts. So finally, what happened was there was a company out of Florida that was building these theaters with acoustic treatment. There was a magazine that came out years ago. It was called Audio Video Interiors, a long time ago. And somebody showed this AV dealer a theater that had acoustic treatment and said, you know what? I'm putting a lot of money into my equipment. I like to treat this room, And he called me up and he says, here's your chance to show me what you're talking about.
Right.
And I remember seeing this guy, and I knew exactly what to do because he had these Martin Logan speakers. They were Statements or something like that. They were pretty big speakers. And I knew you have to be careful and not to overabsorb, and that the sound goes backwards and then forwards, and to put it, we actually put a diffuser in back of the speaker to sort of give the speakers a bigger sound stage. And then we absorbed at all the right areas, and we did some diffusion. And I remember we were listening to it was only, I think it was Laserdisc back then. I don't think it was DVD. And I remember listening to a James Taylor concert, and the guy literally looked at me and his jaw dropped, and he says, I have goosebumps. He says, if you would have told me it would make this big of a difference, I would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
And I didn't think much of it. And I went back. I was working for my father back then. And he paid my final invoice, and he gave me $1,000 bonus on the invoice. And on the invoice, there was a beautiful letter that he wrote, which I still have today. And he says, nice people did the job, and you really exceeded my expectations, and I can't believe what a difference it made. And here's an extra bonus for taking the time and just really, showing me a little bit of love, kind of a thing. And I showed it to my dad, and I remember saying this, maybe more people would want this, maybe. And this was really just starting out. So I found out about CEDIA, which everybody knows about now, but I started calling people, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Nobody wanted they were like, my theaters sound fine. What do I need this acoustic stuff for? Who you? So to get them, I mean, back then you were actually able to call people. I think if you try cold calling somebody now, they think you're trying to sell them insurance. So it's almost impossible.
Sure.
So back then, what we did was to get people's attention. I said, maybe, if I can't really get them on the phone because everybody's busy and they don't really believe in what I'm doing,
Mhm.
I made these music CDs, and every year was a different theme. One was bands that sound like the Beatles, one was acoustic one. And I'm like, maybe if they like the CD, they'll hold on to it, they'll listen to it in their car.
Sure.
And my info would be there because maybe they'll need it one day.
Yeah.
And then another article came out on audio video interiors. Somebody did a theater with acoustic treatment.
Mhm.
And then they called me back 6 months later. Hey, are you the nut who kept on calling me about acoustic treatment? I might have a job for you.
Mhm.
It went into other things. Then can you do star ceilings? And we didn't know how to do star ceilings back then. So we called in Disney, and we were trained by Disney back in the day. And then
Okay.
we met up with the guys who created the Rainforest Cafes. I don't know if you remember the Rainforest Cafes.
Yeah.
But we actually learned how to do the star ceilings with the guys who made the star ceilings for them also.
Mhm.
And that's how we developed, and we kind of, every time somebody needed something, we had to create a solution for. And
Mhm.
that's really what developing products are, and how you develop a company. You're solving a need, right?
Yep.
And then with our seating line, back then nobody was making theater seating, so we had somebody making seating for us. And then eventually one of the sales managers caught on to what we were doing, and I said, I really want to be protected, and I want to be able to sell a product, but I want to make it really unique. All the spaces are very small.
Mm.
So how do we make use of the space and not be plastered against the screen? Because with the chairs back then, they would recline so far back that you would bring everybody closer to the screen, right?
Mhm.
So you'd have to get a smaller screen because the screen would be so overwhelming.
Right.
The quality wasn't as good as it was now, because now it's 4K, but back then it was like, I don't know, I think it was 480p.
Mm.
It's real.
Wow. I couldn't imagine that on a big screen.
Yeah, so it was not great.
Mhm.
So we're always trying to be as far away from the screen as possible. We don't want to be up against the wall. All these things that I knew from acoustics, and
Yeah.
so we developed chairs. Over the years, we created the first dual motorized chair in the industry. So you have two motors, because sometimes somebody wants to have an extra row and you don't have the room, so we can just motorize the footrest but not the back, uh,
Ah.
or have two motors for
Yep.
total control over the motor.
Okay.
We also have chairs that are zero clearance, meaning they don't recline at all. They literally telescope up and down.
Mhm.
So, because sometimes, if you've been to a theater, it gets a little tight if you don't do the platforms properly, and people will actually recline into the people in back of them. So
Yeah.
it's tight for
Uncomfortable.
for space. These are literally zero clearance, so you can never recline it to somebody else.
Mhm.
Also, sometimes you have a bar counter, right? And then if you
Yep.
have a bar counter with a regular chair, you would have a 6-inch gap.
Right.
Whereas with these other chairs, you can put them right up against the bar counter, and it's cleaner, and it brings everybody away from the screen 6 inches. So if you have 3 rows,
Right.
it's like 18 inches that now you're
Yeah,
gaining.
that adds up and that eats up your floor space.
Exactly. So all these things matter. And then also sightline studies. We didn't know what a sightline study was. So I think when we did our first theater, we didn't realize, that you can, if you do 2 or 3 rows of seats, you might not see the bottom of the screen from the third or second row.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know, and I can't tell you how many AV dealers I work with where they buy like an LED wall, let's say,
Mhm.
and they bought it already,
Right.
and they were working with somebody else, and they didn't do a sightline study, and the third and second row can't see half the screen.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that case? So you got to be able to think of all that. So from, look, as you learn, you grow, and that's, and the knowledge is power.
Yeah. Well,
So
you've designed how many theaters would you say that your company has designed over the years? Even
um,
just roughly.
we've done hundreds at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And these aren't like little home theaters. I mean, we look at your book, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit. Inside your book are some absolutely spectacular. I mean, we're talking drop dead gorgeous, really high end luxury home theaters. My favorite one is the Drive-In.
Oh
The
wow.
gentleman has a garage door that opens up. You see him pull into the garage, parks it, walks right into his theater, and from the theater you can actually see. I think he's got a Porsche out there. It's beautiful. So just super cool. Something that you would never think of But people that we're finding with Obsessed Home Theater is that people that love high-end cars and garages, they also love home theater. And so that's why Matt and I partnered, myself with Matt Mormon from Obsessed Garage,
Yeah.
because we know there's a shared passion there. And so I love seeing how
Oh,
he has the
100%.
passion for, exotic and luxury vehicles, but he also has a beautiful, beautiful home theater. So that's my personal favorite.
So that guy was, it was very interesting. It was 2009 when that happened, and the whole world went to, and literally the phone stopped ringing for everybody. So it was a little scary.
Sure.
And we were designing this theater for like 3 or 4 months. I mean, and we were going nowhere. And then finally, the guy was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do the project. I just bought a new car, and I need an extra spot for my car. So I don't know if this is going to work out. And I was so pissed because we spent so much time on it. And when you're spending that much time, it's so draining.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so as I'm walking out the door, and I don't know why I said it, but I said, why don't you just drive your car into the theater, kind of a thing, as a joke.
Right. He's like,
And then he literally stopped me in my tracks.
Right.
And then he started to get excited. I'm like, what do you mean by that? I said, well, you can literally, like in the Batcave, like the way Bruce Wayne drives into the Batcave, you can kind of have that set up, have a motorized door open up, and then drive in, have it on display right next to your wine cellar, which we also built for him. And then we can have a motorized shade, so you don't actually see the car if you don't want to. And then you want to show it, it'll go up. And then we could even go as far as watching a movie from the car if you wanted to, actually see it from the screen. And then we'll have a secret door which you can walk in, and then that would be your theater part. It's really a man cave more than anything else.
Yeah.
As you're leaving the theater, there's a secret door that's like a Star Trek door, where the door goes from left to right, and you put your thumb on it, and then it reads it. Yep. So that was something that came from the client. That was something that he's always wanted to have. So it just worked out. I mean, we literally had to knock down the foundation wall to do that. It was, it was scary because a lot of these theaters, sometimes, you get a request and you gotta, if you want to do the work, you got to problem solve. You have to figure it out. I've never done something like that before. I didn't know how we were going to do it. And when we sold it, what was really cool, and we were doing, we still do them for people sometimes, but we actually did like a virtual video, like a Pixar video of him driving into, this is before the room was built.
Right.
We really wanted to impress him.
Yeah, so he could envision it. Like, that's me. Totally. That's what this is going to look like.
Yeah, so we literally got the make and model of his car, the finish of his car.
Wow.
An avatar of him driving in the car, coming into the room.
Nice.
Not out online, there was a definition for what a man cave is with the definition, so we have that in it. Yeah. And then, the secret door and the whole thing, and then also all the LED lighting changing, which was pretty cool. So, that was gratifying. That was a difficult project. That job took almost a year to build.
Right.
That was rough,
But it turned out beautiful.
It's amazing.
Absolutely. Like, it's, to me, those types of things are masterpieces. And I know a lot of you guys watching this video, you're like, well, Michael, I'll never get to that point. The reality, I don't think most of us believe that we'll ever get to that point.
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know who you're going to come into contact with, who you're going to network with, who you're going to partner with. Yep. And you never know where you're going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 30 years from now. You may be the owner of your own company. You may be doing home theater installs, and you build one in your own theater space. And so
that's what happened to me. I mean, honestly, I never thought I'd be able to, I was just telling you before, I was dreaming of a Pioneer Elite rear projection TV. And I was like, nothing is going to be better than this, And it's like getting a car, once you get your car, you're like, all right, well, what's my next car after you've had it for 6 months? Because that's just the way people are. That's just in general. But I've done work for policemen. I've done work for school teachers. I mean, yeah, we do get crazy stuff, but we also do work for a lot of everyday people. And, I mean, most of our theaters, let's face it, they're not drive-in movie theaters or Lord of the Rings theaters, but we do a lot of normal stuff. But it's the stuff that's over the top that is the most amount of problem solving and stuff that you really don't know how you're going to do it. And then when it finally comes together, you're kind of amazed that you're able to pull it off. You know, it's
Yeah.
one of those things.
One thing that speaks volumes to me is if you're able to handle these massive, complex systems, you've got different control systems in there, just a lot of automation, like you were talking about the shades, you've got this thumbprint door with this, so
Yeah.
if you're able to do that, then somebody that has a lower end budget, it's like, okay, my theater might be pretty easy or a lot easier for you to do. And it
Right.
gives me more confidence that if you can do this, well, then certainly you can do a great job with my home theater.
Right. And that's why, like it in the book, I didn't want it to be all about themed theater. So we only have 2 or 3 in there, and the rest are like normal rooms, because the book was really intended for the whole market, to educate architects and interior designers around the country to get them excited about doing home theater, because from traveling all over the world and all over the United States and meeting with different architects, I noticed they're leaving the home theater out, or they don't understand it, or it's too complicated. So they literally talk clients out of doing theaters because they don't want to do the work.
Right.
And it's really doing a disjustice to a client, because clients who want it, they should get what they want. And, there's a big difference between sitting in the living room and watching a 100-inch TV than being in a theater that's totally immersive, where you're actually part of the experience. You're no longer a spectator. You're actually part of the movie. And that's what they don't get.
Yeah.
And one other thing that they say is, well, what do you want to be alone in a dark room for? Don't you want to be, but the truth is, and for people who really know home theater, when you're in a living room and it's off your kitchen or whatever it is, you're hearing people talking, you're hearing another TV that's in the kitchen area. You're taking that volume, you're cranking it up, you're making it louder, you're making it lower, you're making it louder again.
Yeah.
And you really, you have a big screen, but you're not, it's almost like you're just there, but you're also probably looking at your phone because you're not really immersed in what you're watching.
Yeah.
In our theaters, you kind of go in there and you don't even know where, you come out of my showroom and you don't even know where you were for the last hour. People are amazed.
Yeah. And I think you bring up some really great points. That one thing we want to do with any theater is we want to remove the distractions. We want to remove the light distractions. We want to remove the sound distractions, and I can think of like my living room right behind here. My wife's going to be walking by, my kids are going to be coming in the front door. Somebody's going to be opening the fridge, the laundry's going. And so all of these things are fighting for my attention if I were to watch a movie. And so, like you said, I can go in my dedicated theater room, shut the door, and it's quiet and it's dark and it's got a big screen. And what I want to do is I want to have my speakers and my projector all dialed in such that none of those things draw attention to themselves. Because the first time that, you're looking back going, oh, wow, that was cool, you've kind of missed it. You want all of that to be one cohesive unit that just places you, almost transports you from where you were 10 minutes ago before you came into the theater room. And then you sit down and now you're not watching Dune, you're in Dune. You're not watching Maverick, you're in the cockpit. And so to me, the stresses of life, I think all of us are under stress, whether it's with your job, with your family, health issues. And I can't tell you how many people on my channel tell me, Michael, you've helped me to get back into home theater. You've ignited that spark. I used to enjoy it, got away from it, but now I'm building out my home theater. And then some people are further than that. They've built it. And they said, Michael, my home theater helped me get through COVID. It helped me get through a dark time in my life because I was able to go in there with my family and with my friends and just kind of escape for a while. That's so much more healthy than a lot of things that we could do to escape from the world.
It is so meditative. And I've heard that term from other people. They call the rooms that we build escape rooms, which is a good term for it, because it is, you are basically escape whatever's going on that screen, And so I mean, my hours are long because I'm working on both coasts or whatever, and sometimes I don't get a break until 10 o'clock or whatever. Like, and we've talked about this. So at 10 o'clock at night, it's really my time, and I'll go into the room just to listen to music because it's tuned so perfectly, and you just get into the music and you escape, and it's got this like meditative feel where it brings down your blood pressure, and it's just I just to me it's heaven. It's like I kind of miss it when I'm traveling, and I love traveling and I love going away on vacation, but
Sure.
I'm kind of like drawn to it, and and a lot of that is because of how it relaxes me and how it brings me back to earth, because my days are hard, it's a lot of hours, and it's not easy. Life is hard,
Well, life is it's hard, it's unfair, it's disappointing, and I mean, it really is. And so being able to go into a refuge, go into an area where just allows you to just unplug.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. So like I love to game. And so a lot of people in the home theater space, they'll game on their home theaters. Like you said, a lot of people love music. So they'll dim the lights down. So in my theater room, I've got an acoustically transparent screen, and the screen lifts up pretty easily, and it's held up and supported by gas struts. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll lift that up. If I've had a long day, I'll go in the theater room, and like you said, I'll put on some music. I'll lift up the screen, turn off all the lights, but I'll have the LED lights up front, and just, relax, like just unwind, unplug, leave the phone in the other room, and let's just kind of chill for a little bit. And to me, I think that's like good medicine. I mean, it's healthy for the body.
I mean, I actually do meditation, so that's my meditation room.
Yeah.
And that's, I do it every morning, and that's how I keep clear, and that's how I'm able to multitask. And I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. It's so important.
Yeah. Well, Richard, I'd love to dive more in your book. So you just came out with this book. You said, how long did it take you to, from start, like, man, I want to write a book, to I've got a finished copy in my hand? How long did that take?
Believe it or not, it was a 4-year process, a 4-year journey.
Yeah.
First of all, getting the sponsors, people in the industry, everybody's busy trying to get them to help me with it. I have a couple of very well-known people in the industry helping me with it.
Yeah.
And just getting all the photographs of all the spaces, try to get the permission to have them let me photograph it. That's not easy, know.
A lot of them want to be private. They don't want people to know. I've had people tell me, I don't even want my employees to know that I've got this nice of a home theater. Because then it paints a different perspective of who they are, and and it might hinder that relationship even with their employees. So I can understand that. You got professionals. You've done lots of theaters for people that are very, very well known in the industry, not in the industry, but just in like music industry and in Hollywood. And so they don't want people to know all their business, and I can understand that.
Yeah. So I mean, the only one I think who offered to be in the book was Jose Reyes.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so one of the theaters in the book, it took me 15 years for him to let me photograph it.
Wow.
He said no to me every time.
Persistence. Keep asking.
And what happened was we ended up servicing him so much and taking care of him. I never charged him.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, I have this book coming out. I really want you to be part of it. It's a very interesting room.
Yeah.
Can we just do this? And he said no again. And then about a month later, I think it was his wife that talked him into it and said, just let him photograph the room.
Yeah.
And then we even did a video of the room, but I think the video was kind of, that was hindering on his patience a little bit. Yeah. And it was like, can you get out of here because I have a meeting, and you're here way too long. Because when you photograph a room like what we do, 100%. It's very difficult to photograph. It takes hours, sometimes a complete day, just to do 3 or 4 shots, especially a video.
Yeah.
So, people don't want, a bunch of cameras and lights in their house for an entire day. But, and we use some of the top people in the industry to photograph it also, guys like Philip Ennis, who's like a genius with this stuff, and some other people like that, like Salvatore Dovi, who shot the Notre Dame theme theater, which was really interesting for us. So it took 4 years, and then putting it all together. So the book actually started beforehand. So a good friend of mine, Theo Calamarakis, did a book 20 years ago, and I remember what they did for the whole industry. It really helped the whole industry a lot. But I was talking to Theo, and we were talking about what I was mentioning, how I was traveling to different places, and how come in Houston, we're not building theaters and the architects aren't specifying them, but in Dallas, they're building tons of theaters.
Right.
Why is that? Why is this happening? So I said, if we can get books into the hands of architects, interior designers to educate them more, maybe it will inspire them to build more home theaters, because they'll realize that they're missing out on something and get excited, because when Theo did his theater book 20 years ago, which I still have, and I friggin' love it. It brought a lot of excitement into the industry. So that was kind of what I wanted to do. And Theo, I guess he wanted me to carry that torch.
Right.
But also theater design's changed quite a bit from 20 years ago.
Oh, 100%.
And a lot of the theaters that Theo did were not for everybody. They were way over the top, very expensive. A lot of the rooms were over $1 million.
Right.
And a lot of clients don't want to spend that kind of money or even close to it. So I wanted to have theaters where there was some over the top stuff, but most of it was stuff that would be for the everyday client that would build a theater, like a high-end theater in somebody's home. So I wanted to be more of like a relatable book. And then I also wanted to be educational. I didn't want it to be a how-to book, but I want it to be enough where people can actually understand what actually is acoustics. What does it mean? What is CEDIA?
Right.
I can tell you how many architects and interior designers, they have no clue what CEDIA is. So I even have a page about that.
Yeah.
And I have some of the top people in the industry talking about the importance of audio calibration and video calibration and the difference between having a big TV and a screen, and just certain basics that are like must have for doing a theater. It's like, you want to do a theater, at least do these basic things and then you'll be okay. What it looks like is really a secondary thing. But for performance, there's a couple of things that you need to do. So at least this will get people excited about that and to get them to learn a little bit. And then when I have clients that are doing theaters with me now, I'm giving them a copy of the book, or, because now they're signed on with me.
Right.
And it saves me a lot of time, because it's actually educating them on what's about to happen. So they're getting smarter just by taking a little bit of time and reading it. And then it gets them excited for what's to come.
Kind of gets the wheels turning, when they're provide some inspiration as well as education.
Yeah, because nobody knows. Look, I've been doing this for so long, and it's still like an unknown thing. It's just like, it's this thing that nobody really knows about. And I still try to explain to people what I do for a living. They have no idea what I do. They don't understand it.
Yeah.
They think I'm selling TVs and projectors, because home theater is such a broad term. A TV, a TV and a couch could be a home theater, right? It doesn't have to be the kind of what we do. So it's such a broad term at this point. It's like Kleenex. So you have to sort of draw the line, and you have to say, well, we're making spaces that are, I can call it like an escape room or whatever, but we're basically a design build architectural firm that manufactures the interiors, and we work with the AV dealers around the country, partner with them to create this turnkey experience. So we work with the do-it-yourselfers. We work with the guys who are doing the AV for these rooms, and they need a theater designer who can put it all together and actually build the room for them, because or else you got to talk to your contractor, and he's probably done 3 rooms where we've done hundreds, and you need a map to follow. These theater rooms are so difficult that if you just kind of wing it, you'll be rebuilding the platform 3 times. You'll have issues where maybe the platform's not high enough. You'll have the wrong sight lines. You'll have speakers in the wrong locations. Your throw distance might not be the right throw distance for the screen. The projector that you buy is the wrong projector, and you just purchased it and you spend a lot of money. So we're like the home theater bodyguards, so to speak.
Yeah, I've heard of guys buying the projector, buying the screen, installing it, and they realize that it doesn't quite fill the screen, so they have to shrink their projector screen down a little bit.
Yeah.
To remount it and move it forward 6 inches. It's a bigger deal, so it's great. Or they'll just mask it down a little bit.
It's the most complicated room in the house, man. It really is. It's like as complicated as a kitchen is. This is twice as complicated. Yeah. And the most difficult part of these theaters is usually the build out. So if you want to do the noise reduction in a space to stop noise from leaving that theater, you can't even embark on that without having a theater design. Yeah. You can't even buy a projector without having a theater design first, because if you think about it, look at this room in back of me. You have a beautiful stove ceiling. Let's say you buy a JVC or a Sony and the throw distance is wrong. That throw distance might be so short that you might put that projector right in the center of the entire room, killing that entire look of the ceiling. So that's why we always say you have to start with the design first, start with the floor plan, and then we go into all the equipment, because everything has to be exactly where it has to be. It has to be, you only have one shot to get it right. And if you've ever been on a job site, nobody reads the drawings. They don't pay attention. The electricians constantly never read the drawings. So a lot of times you have to meet with them 2 or 3 times until everything's exactly where it has to be. Yeah. You have to pull it through and then caulk it, and then you seal the room. And then the finishing part, that's the easy part. Making sure they don't miss anything and doing all those checks and double checks. Right. That's really where the hard stuff comes in,
So inside your book, you've got about 15 home theaters.
Yeah.
I'm curious, were there any of them that presented like just some big challenges? Because earlier you mentioned in every theater, there's challenges that we have to face.
Right.
Sometimes the room can only be a certain dimension, or I've seen people design theaters and they had limitations on the height of the room. And so I'm sure that you've run into some crazy challenges, whether it's in the book or even ones that you guys have designed. So maybe I'd love to go down that for a minute.
Yeah, man, 100%. So like in my theater, in my own home, it's like my lab, just like with you, you're constantly changing, and guys like us will be, 90 years old and we'll still be tweaking our home theater and be like, it's just not right yet. We can make it better. We can get the bass just that much better. It's always going to be like that. But because I live by the beach, I don't have a basement. So I did my theater in my garage.
Right.
So you're talking about problems.
Yeah.
That room was super difficult. So just to give you some examples of what we had to do. So when you get a garage, a 2-car garage, there's usually a giant pole that's in the middle of the room, right where your screen's going to be, and that's holding up your second floor. So the first thing you have to do is create what's called a flush header to to support the ceiling above.
Sure.
That needs to be engineered. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And the electrical box for my theater was like right where the screen was going to be. So if I had like a blowout or something happen, I would have to like call my AV crew or get somebody to help me to take off the screen, fuse or whatever, if something happened. I didn't want that to happen. So we had to move the whole electrical box to the left.
Oh, wow.
And then what we did was we ended up doing a motorized curtain to cover it so you don't see it at all. And it's kind of out of sight. And then if if something happens, I can just open up the drapes and have easy access. The other thing is when you do a garage, a lot of times you have the clean out valve for the plumbing right in your garage. And if you ever had a clogged pipes that go underneath the ground, sometimes you have to gain access to that. So we had to create a secret door that's on the platform so we can gain access to that.
Okay.
That's just some of the many problems. Now, acoustically, I've worked with 3 of the top acousticians in the country on my room because my room is almost square, which if you know anything about acoustics, it's probably the worst that you can get. But this is all I have. I wanted to go into this business. I went full throttle. I sold my other company, and this was the only room that my wife gave me. When you're married, you're the boss, so I gotta make it work. And So I was like, how am I going to get a sound stage out of this? This is impossible. And I researched. So from talking to various acousticians, it's like, I didn't realize this, but you can actually fool a room acoustically, thinking it's larger than what it is by putting types of depths of diffusers and things like that. And we did that. We experimented with it.
Yeah.
And by using different processes and calibrating, you can use delay and all these other things to create that immersion. And we got it to the point where it's pretty amazing now. So I achieved something I never thought I would be able to do, but it took me 15 years of tweaking it and working on it till I figured out all those different tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly just trying to make it right. And I think I'm pretty much there. I mean, if you've ever, one of these days, if you come out to New York, I'll take you into my room. Just the things that you hear in this room is just, it's unbelievable. It's so cool.
No, I'd love that. One thing that you mentioned is that, in your room, you've got, challenges, and we all face challenges. But what I love is that, and I've always tried to share with you guys that are watching this video, is work with whatever you've got. One thing I love doing is I love doing home theater tours. And so I've been all around the country. I've been around the world to check out some really big, massive $1 million home theaters. And I've been to as small as I think it was a 12 by 13 bedroom, kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not ideal, but you walk in the room and I could not believe my eyes. It was themed. So it was Harry Potter themed.
Oh, wow.
It had 4 theater seats, wall to wall. You couldn't get behind the seats. Behind the seats, there were, I think, 2 subwoofers. In the front was an 18-inch subwoofer. It was an infinite baffle. So the rear part of the subwoofer was literally firing into the adjacent room. So that saved him some space. He went with all in walls because he didn't have floor space in a 12 by 13 room. He had a 120-inch diagonal screen with a projection, and all this in a little bedroom. And what I love with your story is the same thing. I had a non-ideal room. I did the best with what I had to work with. And I've always encouraged you guys watching this, if you've got a bedroom, if you've got a garage, if you've got a bonus room, I've seen people do a shed like outside their house. My goodness. I mean, you just got to get creative with it. Those of you that have basements, Richard and I are just completely jealous because we just don't have that.
Yeah, we don't have it.
That would make our lives a whole lot probably easier and cheaper too, because it's already kind of constructed and you just got to add some walls and electrical instead of adding on an additional room sometimes to your home.
So let me tell you something. My wife and I, we spent about 3 months looking at houses with basements. And I could have saved myself 3 months if I just would have just said, let's just, let's just take the theater and put it in the garage, because the rooms were so small and there were crawl spaces. There were, and I'm glad I didn't do it because we had a huge hurricane. We went through Hurricane Sandy here.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that my theater didn't get hit. But, you live and you learn, I mean, one other thing in my theater that I didn't talk about it, and you can see it in the book, but you can see it also on our website. If you go into AcousticSmart.com, I played in a band for many years, and I'm still into my music. So I wanted a place to have a recording studio in that same theater. So what we did was, because we're so limited on space, we created like a motorized shade, and there was a mural on it that kind of blends in with the theater. And then when you press a button and the shade goes up, my recording studio's there. It's like, we call it Rockstar Headquarters. And there's enough room there where you can actually do your mixing, but I didn't want to have a pocket for sound to go into. So I made it so when I'm not doing any mixing or doing any kind of recording, when the shade goes down, it's not affecting, like any of the sound stage or anything. Right. So it serves 2 purposes. It gets rid of that opening, the recess that would have been 3 feet for sound to go into, and it closes up, and now I have a good sound stage. It literally blends in with the room. People don't even know what it is. They don't even know that there's a hidden wall there, because the mural matches all the colors in the room perfectly. And then because I lived by the beach, I did like these 2 movie posters on the mural. You know, I did like a campy, like I did beach blanket bingo and Ride the Wild Surf, you know, to give it that beach vibe because we're by the
Right.
beach. And just to be a little silly, so it wasn't so serious. You know, I don't want it to be an uptight room. You know,
One thing that you mentioned that kind of I thought of is several times during our conversation, you mentioned hidden this and, you know, basically like the hidden door and then a door that they didn't realize.
so yeah, people want James Bond. They
Yeah.
want, or they don't want to show off their toys. I mean, I have a lot of baseball players and athletes where
Mhm.
they have their trophy room, and
Mhm.
we'll create like a hidden shade,
Yeah.
and the shade will have like a mural on it or something that'll just like artwork. It'll blend in with the rest of the house.
Yeah.
Only when they want to show to somebody, then it would come
Sure.
up, and nobody even knows it's there. You know,
Right.
and I think that's cool because you know you're not, you know, you don't really want to show off everything to everybody. It's
Yeah. Well,
just,
not everybody's even interested. I mean,
just want to keep it to yourself. You know.
yeah. So let's think about this. You have designed your company, AcousticSmart, has designed hundreds of theaters. What's maybe the coolest thing that you've seen that you guys have implemented in a home theater?
Well, there were a couple of crazy things that we've done. So we did a Notre Dame theme theater that's in the book. That's pretty cool. And that particular client was a benefactor for Notre Dame.
Mm.
And there were a lot of obstacles we had to go through. And while we were building the theater and designing it, he had a lot of requests. And just trying to get the logo for Notre Dame, he had to get the permission from Notre Dame to put the logo embroidered into the seats.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then we had to do it in the carpet where we had a special embroidery in the carpet and to get the colors perfectly to match the Notre Dame logo was super difficult. One of the things he requested was to go to an actual Notre Dame game and take a super wide image of the audience, of being like in the audience at a game. So when he's in his room, he
Right.
would feel like he's at the actual game.
Oh, wow.
So the actual acoustic treatment is printed on this breathable fabric of the audience at an actual game, and
Nice.
all the acoustic modules are hidden in the back of that.
Yeah.
And then on the screen wall, he has a screen where he has, you know, the big image from when he's watching a movie, and then it goes up, and then he wanted a skybox effect where he has the 5 TVs, and then underneath where we hid the subwoofers is his score from his favorite game that he went to when he was with his dad. So there were like a lot of things, you know, that he wanted to recreate. And one of the coolest things that happened was while we were building the room, all of a sudden he pulls up, and we're like, "What is all this?" He says, "This is the brick from the Notre Dame Stadium. I have a whole bunch of this extra brick. Can we use it in the theater?" So we ended
Wow.
up like taking the brick from the stadium and slicing it thin, and
Yeah.
that's what you see in the actual room. Yeah, it
Nice.
was pretty cool. That was pretty wild. You know,
Yeah.
for somebody to go to that extent. You know,
Sure.
I mean, it's not your normal thing, but and then we just finished a room that was modeled after another theater that was done for some rap star in Canada, and
Mhm.
we've had a couple of clients tell us that they really like the look of this, and we had to recreate something similar to that.
Mhm.
And it was such a gigantic room, and there's so many light coves in the ceiling and on the walls, and then we had to cut all these little pieces of tiny fabric, so when the light was shining against the inside of the cove,
Mhm.
you don't see the raw paint. You just see like a clean
Right.
finish. And I forget what we call it in the book. I think it's called light and dark or something. But it's almost like a black and white room.
Yeah.
But
And that's the one that had all the white lights on
yeah,
it?
but when you go in that room, it's mind blowing. It's so freaking cool when you go in there, and the room sounds so good. My guys wanted to kill me when they were building the room because like this is the most labor intensive thing I've ever done in my life. There were, I think, on the amount of acoustic panels, like the little tiny panels, like
Yeah.
160 little pieces.
Right.
I mean, it was super intense. But and then all the seats had to be custom made. So we actually, you know, we make our own seats and we manufacture everything. And they wanted something that we've never built before, so we had to match whatever was in the picture. and you're making something for somebody that they've never sat in, and there's a
Right.
huge risk involved in that because there were a lot of seats there, like 18 seats. What if you didn't find it comfortable? So we had to create a mock-up, and it was interesting. I
Yeah.
always tell the guys on my team, sometimes doing these jobs, I feel like I'm Tom Cruise in a Mission Impossible. So,
You want us to do what?
yeah, and then you finally get away, and then you have a happy ending, but you
Yeah.
don't know you're going to get there because it's like
Yeah.
it's challenging.
Yeah.
Then you have the deadlines, as well, and then of course we have that Lord of the Rings theater that we did, which was very interesting for us. I didn't really know that much about the Lord of the Rings except for the movie, and
Mhm.
so the guy was he did a Game of Thrones theater with somebody else, and this was a second theater, and they had a terrible experience. Like the guy got dirt throughout the entire house. The one who built it,
Yeah.
it took way too long. It was very messy. The wife didn't want to go through it again, and the AV integrator said, "Well, look, I have these guys, AcousticSmart Home Theater Interiors. You should really give them a shot, on your next house." And we finally got them to meet with us,
Mhm.
and the process went very well on the design end. But then after we learned about what he wanted to do, then we were like, well, now that we got the job, now how do we build it? Because a lot of these things, are things that you can't even put into the drawings because there's no GUI, there's no way, you can't put that into AutoCAD. How are you going to put gargoyles and
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
in?
There's not a model of that.
Yeah. So it was just like, how are we going to do this? And I don't think you ever make any money doing rooms like that. But
Mhm.
at the end, it's something to say, all right, I did it, and you sort of say to yourself, I did something that I never thought I could do, and I pushed myself to that next level, and
Sure.
we were able to achieve it, even though we're not, but on that room, there were so many obstacles and so many crazy things. One of the cool things that we did was um, he wanted it to be like you're in a real like in a fortress, like in the Lord of the Rings, and he wanted to have that feeling. He didn't want to have carpeting, so the only way to really get that effect of being like in a castle was you had to have like concrete or stone, which, as you know, is terrible for acoustics, right? So we ended up making that of concrete, and then he was an interesting guy. He had all these family crest, and he wanted to put the family crest on the floor,
Interesting.
and then he wanted to have it on the seats. So we had to figure out how to do that. Never did that before. And then he had a huge collection of Lord of the Rings stuff, like more than I've ever seen anybody have. You can probably spend an hour or two just going through all the collection he had. So we had to figure out how we're going to do that, put it on some sort of a display, but have it match the entire theater.
Right.
And then he wanted to have dragons attacking the castle. So it looked like, at the end of Lord of the Rings, you have the dragons and all that. Like, how are we going to do that? That's crazy. I don't even know how we're going to figure this out. So what we ended up doing was we made these two. They look like windows on the side, like full windows, and we have a hidden TV inside these windows. So it looks like nobody would even know what it is. It looks like a window.
Right.
And on the TVs, we have the TVs hooked up to a Kaleidescape script. It's actually, we can create a video, like a 30-second video, put onto a Kaleidescape.
Right.
So every time when the movie starts, it's programmed so the lights dim, and then you'll see these dragons in windows, like breathing fire and everything.
Right.
But for like 30 seconds, and then the movie starts.
Right.
Each window has the dragons on one end of the castle and on the other end of the castle because they're from different parts of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's super cool, So that was interesting, and trying to figure that out and how we're going to solve it.
Again, more challenges, more solutions that you had to figure out for this client.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Let's just make it happen.
Yeah, and then also acoustically, and then he wanted all the walls to be stone, and you can't do stone in a theater because you'll kill the room. It'll just bounce all over the place. So we ended up, which we've done in the past, which we did on this other Egyptian theater. We basically found some really cool images of stone that look like stone from the inside of a castle, and we printed it on breathable acoustic fabric, which we call Smart.
Yeah.
And on the theater he did on the Game of Thrones theater, he didn't even have acoustic treatment in there. The guy just sold them. I don't even know what he sold them, but it was like some Dacron and some other stuff. So he didn't even know what a room would sound like if it was done correctly, you know. And by the time we were done and the room was completely finished, we even did a concession area that was really interesting too. But when it was all said and done, I mean, I have to say the room sonically kind of blew my mind because, you know, you never really, you know, when I talk to some acousticians, like, you know, like even though it works out on paper, it doesn't mean it's going to work out sonically sometimes.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, you get the magic and sometimes you really don't. And the room could be a perfect room. This room, I was hearing stuff like on my shoulder, like so vivid. And the speakers on that one, they were Pro Audio speakers, Paul Hales' company. And I remember he did something very interesting, whereas most people, they calibrate from the processor. He calibrated from the speakers, which is very unusual.
Okay.
And then I got the client to upgrade to Storm Audio for the processor because the room was so big and with all the different, you know, with the, you know, with the concrete floor and the acoustic walls and all the things that we had going on. I'm like, we really need to dial it in somehow. And, you know, once we calibrated the speakers and then the processor, just did a basic calibration on the processor. It was like, honestly, it was probably one of the best rooms I've ever heard. Like I was like, oh my God. I was shocked. And the client, before it was even calibrated, thought it sounded great. Like it was so much better than what he had on his first theater.
Yeah.
I'm like, trust me, this room is not even ready yet. You don't even have any of the levels set right or the distances to the, you know. And I normally don't get involved in calibration. I leave it up to the AV dealers. But on this one, I wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is so freaking cool, you know.
Yeah.
And then we watched, you know, we watched something in there. It was just, you know, it was one of those. It was that's, you know, things like that just make it all worth it for me.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Well, you and I had talked about the possibility sometime next year we might be doing some more collaborations together and doing some home theater tours of some of his incredible home theaters that they've designed and built. So I'm super pumped about that. I think that would be really, really awesome.
That is happening. It will happen. Just got to get through this year first.
Exactly. Well, Richard, at the end of the book, near the back is something that's near and dear to me, and that is demos, like some demo material. You reached out to several people and said, hey, what are your go-to, or maybe even some that most people aren't familiar, because we know what the standard go-to ones are, and sometimes those are overplayed. So it's great that in the book there's a list of those things, but I'd love to even hear maybe some of your favorite demos. You know, when you're wanting to show off your home theater or even in a client's home theater that you built for them, what are some of those go-to movies or scenes that you like?
Yeah, so I listen to a lot of music in my theater, and people don't realize, you know, how involving that could be and how it really give you goosebumps. I mean, I'm so tired of going CDA and seeing Ready Player One, and I just can't watch it anymore. I'm with those.
Sure.
But there's a couple of classics. One in particular is Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
People don't talk about that, but
no, definitely not.
Scene of that movie and the way that they directed it for audio. And you know, Barry Sonnenfeld's in my book also, the movie director, and he designs the subwoofers and the bass in his movies, you know, for a comedy, based on comedy, for sound to get you more, you know, like in that mood to let you know something funny just happened, you know, but it's subconsciously. So they do a lot of stuff in the mixing that people don't even know about, you know. That's really important. But anyway, so on Apocalypse Now, the opening scene is so cool because there's a helicopter that comes in, and it comes 360 degrees. You hear it coming from and back you to the front of you. And as that's happening, you're hearing Jim Morrison and the Doors singing "This Is the End." And it's just such a great demo to show people. They're like, oh my God, this is so cool. Because it's Jim Morrison and the Doors, so it's super cool. The audio, you have music, and you have this helicopter that's literally whirring around the entire room.
Mm.
The other thing, the other demo that I show people that is a really like a lost classic that people don't even realize how good it is a movie called The Patriot with Mel Gibson.
Okay, yeah.
And on the Kaleidescape, it's already set up for it, so they already realize that it's a good demo, but people don't show it, but they should. It's called Birth of a Ghost. When he first, his kid gets killed, and how he has his other two kids with him, and how he goes after like 10 guys all by himself with his two little kids, and you hear the shots coming from and back of you and in front of you, and there's people yelling, and it sounds like they're right in the room with you.
Right.
And there's a person on that side, there's a person on this side, and you really hear the time and effort that they put into the mix. And it is so freaking cool. Yeah. And it puts you right in the middle of the action. Nobody talks about that movie, but that to me is better than Ready Player One, because you hear everything so clearly, and it's like you're actually part of the movie now, What was another one that I was thinking about? There's so many good ones. Oh, here's another great one. It's hard to find. A lot of people don't know about it. If you get the Blue Man Group tubes,
okay,
there's a song called Sing Along. It's with David Matthews.
Okay, yeah.
One of my acousticians, they turned me onto it. I think it's one of the extras on the live disc.
Okay.
And the sound is such an incredible mix, and it's all over you. And then he has like a whip that's like a lighted whip, and you can hear the whip going from all the way from the corner of the room directly right and back you all the way to the right of the room, and you can actually hear the whip going around the room.
Oh wow.
And they did it just to mess with you, like on a song mix, and it's like being on a theme ride. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Another interesting one, I like to look for hidden stuff that people don't really know about. If you remember, there was a Roger Rabbit movie, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. There were a bunch of Roger I can't even say it, Roger Rabbit shorts. There were like 4 of them.
Okay.
And every single one of those is a great demo to show somebody. You can get it. It's like an extra, and it's even hard to get it on the menu. It doesn't come up all the time. It's like 3 or 4 shorts, and each one is actually was all directed by Spielberg. Yeah, the sound is literally all over the place. And one of them, he's on a roller coaster, and you feel like you're on the roller coaster with Roger Rabbit. Yeah, each short is like maybe 3 to 4 minutes, but there's so much action, so much 5.1 going on all over the place. Right. And it's a great demo. And I liked it so much that I would use the Laserdisc, because that was all that they had at that time, that I would use the Laserdisc version of it. Right. Now it's available on Blu-ray, so you get it. It's not available on Kaleidescape. I don't know why they don't have those extras on the Kaleidescape, but you'll have to get the disc in order to get that.
Sure.
And then as far as other things go, let me see some other really cool ones that people don't know about. So for music, one that I think is pretty amazing that nobody knows about. If you're a fan of the Eagles, everybody watches the one in Australia or the one that's in 4-3 with the terrible video. Yeah. Hell Freezes Over. Yeah, Hell Freezes Over. I can't even listen to that. I've heard it so many times. It's like I'm ready to shoot myself. But they came out with with the history of the Eagles. There was a secret concert on that. It's hidden. Okay. It's like a bonus disc, and it's only available on the Blu-ray. And there's a concert from 1978. It was their last tour together with the original band, with everybody. Randy Meisner singing "Take It to the Limit," and Joe Walsh on the guitar, and all I can tell you is that you can hear the people in the bleachers like banging on the bleachers in back you, like as if you're at the concert. Yeah. They remastered that disc, and they must have spent months on it, because the mix on this disc is just it's unbelievable. It's like you're literally at the concert. And when I play that for people, because it's pretty old, it's from 78,
Right.
remastered it to such a point where there was so much love that went into that disc. It's mind blowing, you know.
Right.
So that's a great one. I mean, really, really great. Um, and then and then another good one that nobody knows about either is the Longins of Messina live in Santa Barbara,
Okay.
which is only available on DVD. And you would say to yourself, well, you know, a DVD, that's not going to sound great.
Mhm.
You'll put that disc in and you'll be like, oh my God, it sounds like that acoustic is right there in the room with you. And everything is just placed so perfectly. And, you know, it's such a great mix just to hang out, and they have great jams. They have songs that go on for 8 or 9 minutes with like a violin solo, a sax solo, and they're really grooving. It's really something to see, you know. And then as far as older stuff for music, you can't get it on. You can't do that on the Kaleidescape either because they don't have any of the Beatles stuff.
Mhm.
But some of the Beatles discs, like Help, if you watch any of the Beatles movies, especially Help, the remix on that is so good. Again, it's like you're in the studio with the band,
Yeah.
and it's an unbelievable experience. Like I'll put on a song from Help, and it's only a DVD.
Mhm.
Blu-ray sounds even better, but even on DVD, if your room is calibrated right, if the acoustics are right, it is literally like you're in the recording studio with George Martin, and you're
Yeah.
watching these guys live, and it's just, it puts like, you know, it just puts chills up and down your spine. It's amazing.
And that takes you back to a memory. You know, those are memories growing up.
Oh,
Those are
sure.
memories with probably your father listening to that and in the truck going to town and things like that. And I think that's one of the important parts of movies and music is that it triggers an experience that we had in the past. And
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
binds us to that movie or to that scene or to that song that just resonates in our soul because man, I was in high school and this was going on and that song spoke to me and it helped me get through that or
Right.
something like that.
But it's, you know, I just like being lost in the music. I'm not really an ooh and ah guy where I want to listen to stuff and,
Yeah.
oh, doesn't that cymbal sound great? It's more like, what can I watch and just feel like
Mhm.
I'm just getting immersed and feeling something from that experience.
Yeah.
And a really good, you know, rock CD or like a music disc will bring me into that experience. You know, like I know a lot of people like to watch Hans Zimmer,
Mhm.
which is cool and everything, but I'd rather see it. Um, I'd rather see a concert where there's singing involved in it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
that's just me. Yeah.
Well, the good thing is there's so much content out there, whether it's movies or music, there's something for everybody. And so no matter
Absolutely.
I filmed a home theater tour. It's another $1 million theater. And it was called Tombstone. And this gentleman, I think he was like 78 years old.
Wow.
And his entire Kaleidescape, I mean, no lie, except for I think one clip, the entire Kaleidescape was all Western, every one of them. You know, it was the coolest thing. You know, I mean, do I like Western? No, not really. But man, he loved them. And that's the great thing is we get to cater our home theaters. We get to design them like we want to. We get
Sure.
to decorate them like we want to. And we get to put the content that resonates with us, music or movies, um, something that's going to um, just like I said, it's going to resonate with us. Something within our inner soul that just says, "Yeah, I like this."
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I can tell you is I was never a Western person.
Hmm.
Watching it on a big screen, you know, like especially the old Clint Eastwood movies like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, it's just, how do you not watch that and feel something from that? It's
Yeah,
just, and to see that in the original aspect ratio in 2.35 on a big screen like that, you know, it's, you know, you realize that was the way that it was meant to be seen, and you feel special for be able to watching that in your own home, or like
yeah,
even just watching Jaws, because
right,
on a regular TV, you have bars on the top and bottom, but if you have a screen that's a CinemaScope screen,
sure,
watching it the way that people were watching it back in the 70s.
right,
And I wasn't allowed to see Jaws when I was a kid, you know, because I was way too young, and
right,
it was too scary.
Yeah.
but I can watch it now and sort of take my mind back of that must have been what it would have been like if I would have went to the movies back then, or the first Indiana Jones movie, which is also filmed in that aspect ratio,
Yeah.
or the first Star Wars, but there's a big difference between watching it though in your home theater
Hmm.
and watching it on a 16:9 screen with the bars on the top of it.
Right.
It looks like TV. It doesn't look like it's a cinema. You don't feel like you're connected to it, and that's really what the difference is.
Sure.
I mean, I love that. The guy that created um, uh, that particular type of image for the home,
Hmm.
and to do the first projector, it was Sam Runco, and he did it because he was a big fan of the movie Ben-Hur,
Hmm.
and he was really upset at the fact that he had to watch it in 16:9, and that was filmed in Cinerama. So
Mm.
what he wanted to do was figure out a way, and he did. He invented a way to do it,
Right.
to create the CinemaScope in the home, which now everybody's doing, but nobody did it back then.
Right.
It was the first, just because he wanted to watch Ben-Hur. But he
Nice.
was that innovative where he wanted to take it to the next level. And I remember I helped do the design on his theater, and as a gift, he
Hmm.
gave me that projector. And I remember sitting in my theater watching Ben-Hur for the first time, pinching myself because I was like, this is as close to what it would have been like to see this movie in the theater,
Right.
because you can't go into any movie theater and watch Ben-Hur in that aspect ratio.
Mm.
You have to watch it at home where it's either cropped or
Sure.
so skinny, because it was done in the Cinerama mode, which was on,
Right.
on three gigantic screens.
Super, super
Yeah.
widescreen. Yeah.
Or the movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World also was done the same way. So when you watch that
Right.
on a 16:9 screen, it's very, very small.
Hmm.
But if you watch it in CinemaScope, the way that Runco wanted people to watch it,
Right.
it's as close to being in Cinerama, but
Yeah.
it's in your own home. So, guys like me who are geeks, who are really into it, that is really what it's all about to me. That's the biggest thrill. Or like watching Lawrence of Arabia or something like that. I mean, you'll never be able to watch that in the theater. It's very rare that you see somebody, putting that into a commercial cinema these days.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Well, Richard, you've done an amazing job, man. I can't imagine I guess the joy and the satisfaction after 4 years in the making. This thing is finally published. It's in the hands of uh, interior designers now. We've got folks that are building home theaters. They're buying the book. My audience is already buying the book. I had some friends. I posted this on Facebook earlier today or yesterday, and a couple of the guys, they posted photos of them. They had already bought the book, and
Oh,
and
cool.
they're and they're loving it. And so congratulations on that. If
Thank
you
you.
guys are interested in the book, definitely go to the website hometheaterology.net. You can use Youthman code. So once you hit add to cart on the checkout page, there's an option to insert a coupon code. Just plug Youthman in there, and that'll give you a little discount. So huge thanks to Richard and the team for offering that to my audience. And so I'd love for you guys to go support him and buy the book. This is truly just a very unique, educational, and inspirational gift that you could either buy for yourself. I mean, I buy Christmas gifts for myself all the time, or buy it for somebody that you know. And so I'd love for you guys to be a blessing to Richard and his team for just putting on just an incredible book. So appreciate that, man.
And all the money, just to let you know, it goes to support the home theater industry. So we don't actually make any money from the book at all. So all the money goes to marketing this book towards where we're just actually going to meet with architects, and we're giving them books.
Yeah.
Because we want them to really to learn more about home theater and to specify more home theaters around the country. So the only way to do that is by giving them knowledge and power. So I'm hoping that the book will, wake them up a little bit and then inspire them so that they see, that home theater is alive and well.
Yeah.
There's plenty of guys like me and you out there,
Yeah.
and who really love home theater. And if clients want them, it's good to educate them on how to do these theaters right. So it's really my way of it's my We Are the World, saving grace to try to get the word out about home theater and to share that excitement and really to inspire others to want to build more home theaters.
I think you're doing a great job, and like you said, I mean, we're kind of obsessed. We're all in this home theater space. We want to see it succeed. We want other people to believe that they can do something really awesome in their space, whether they got $1 million budget, $100,000 budget, or even a $10,000 budget. You can build some type of home theater in your space. And I know Richard and the team would love to help you out if you've got the budget, and you can hire somebody to save you the time, the energy, the headache, lean on their expertise of all these home theaters that they've built. I know whenever I try to do something and I'm having to figure it out, I'm usually doing steps wrong. I'm doing them in the incorrect order. And a lot of times I'm having to go back and undo what I did. And that costs me
100%.
time, costs me headache, and it costs me money. So if you want to save some time, money, and energy, reach out to the folks at AcousticSmart. They'd be glad to help you out. So, Richard, this has been a fun conversation. I'm grateful that you took the time out to hang out with us and my audience and just share about your passion for home theater, about your book, and just the impact that you're making in the home theater space.
Thank you. I'm ready to go for another 5 hours until my wife kicks me off and says, "That's it.
That's it, man." Well, cool deal. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like I said, reach out to Richard and his team. Pick up the book on the website, hometheaterology.net. Hope you guys have an incredible week. God bless, and we'll catch you in the next video.